What they create with their mouths, God forbids. And yet they do so with pride, slapping each other upon the back merrily, golfing in the face of innocence. As they weave the fabric of their treachery, it winds its way around grief-stricken mothers, giving them a target to unleash their hurt, sorrow, and rage. Innocence shines forth on this target, God's kiss upon his head, and yet they spin the web of their deceit cunningly, ensnaring everyone. Men of God, the law, the laborer, the child, the saint, they all fall victim. We are all victims now. This is the Vic Feazell Show podcast, hosted by Vic Feazell and Jonathan Zimick. Sponsored by Moroso Wood-Fired Pizzeria and Pinewood Coffee Roasters.
As long as I was going after the crooks that didn't have badges, I was everybody's hero.
And again, we started today's episode with another piece of poetry from our wonderful guest, Mr. Jason Baldwin. So here we have part 2 of our interview with him. So let's begin.
You did not want to take the offered plea.
Oh, no.
Tell us about that.
You know, I'd read about the Alford plea years before when I worked at the law library. You know, it was not new to me. You know, when I encountered it years ago, I never thought in a million years that we would use it as a mechanism to gain our freedom, simply because it was anathema to what I consider justice in this case.
Exactly.
Right? And so it was a Wednesday, August the 10th, in 2011. I was coming in from school. This week was we were interviewing students to assign to school for the following school year, this coming up school year.
In prison.
In prison. GED is important, education is important, rehabilitation is important, and so in school I tutor and help people earn their high school diploma. That was my job at this point. So I'm just making it into the barracks from the office, from the school, and the guard says, "Baldwin, go back to the control center. They want you at the control center. You got a attorney visit." And now, normal procedure is with my attorney's eye, and I know when they're coming to visit me, because you got to schedule it beforehand, and they're going to let me know, "Hey, be expecting to see me on such date and time." I'm like, "Yes, sir." I look forward to that. But this was a complete surprise. So it told me there must be something up, right, for them to make a surprise visit out to the prison to see me. And I already know that we have the evidentiary hearing that we won scheduled for December the 22nd in Judge Laser's court in Jonesboro, And so...
Now, is he the judge that heard the offered plea?
He's the judge that heard the offered plea, but he's not the judge of trial.
Right, there's a different one.
He's not our trial judge. And by all my research that I had done on this justice, I believed that we were going to get a fair trial, or at least as fair a trial as possible in his courtroom. I had no reason to believe that he would deny us that, as opposed to previous judge. And so I was excited and looking forward to the trial and hopeful, And so I go get strip search and everything. I go out and I make my way to the conference room to get my visit with my attorney. It's my Arkansas attorney, Blake Hendricks. He's there. And he told me, he says, "Jason, what if I told you could go home tomorrow?" I said, "I hear a big butt in there."
Yeah.
And so we sat down. He said, "It's my duty to explain to you in detail what they're offering. And this Alford plea, you go home today, all or nothing. Just accept this Alford plea." And I said, "I've heard of the Alford plea. I don't want to accept that. It's not right. It's not justice. Let's fight this." And he says, "Well, Damien and Jesse have already accepted it." I'm like, "How have they already accepted it? I'm just now hearing about it, But, that's the way things work and stuff. Yeah. So I denied it. I said, "No."
And the prosecutor was demanding that all 3 of you take it. He wouldn't let just 2 of you or 1 of you. It was a package deal or nothing.
Correct. They did not want this case going back to trial. And if one of them goes to trial, in essence, the whole case goes back to trial. And so
if you guys had been exonerated, you're looking at massive money coming from the state to pay for your false imprisonment.
Correct. State prosecutor at the end would sum it up at the press hearing. He said, you have 3 defendants, might as well round it up to 20 years, say $1 million per year. That's $60 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, that he's saving the taxpayers. And I support saving the taxpayers' money 100%, but you do not do it at the expense of justice.
No, you don't.
I agree.
And I've said before about this case that when I saw West of Memphis and I saw that prosecutor sitting there saying, the one that put forth the Alford plea, saying that I believe that those young men, I still think they're guilty. Oh my God, I've been reading people for years. That's why I'm a good lawyer.
Right.
That guy was lying.
He was.
Everything about him was just screaming, I'm lying, I'm lying, I'm lying.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about the money. It was all about the politics.
Yes.
And they were twisting your arm to take this Alford plea, primarily because poor old Damien was on death row and was looking at maybe getting the needle in the near future.
Is the only reason I accepted the death penalty. And, you know, I grew up in prison, and I've had many nightmares growing up, ranging from my stepfather chasing my mom, and I can't get to the phone in time to get somebody there to stop him. You know, growing up, that's just nightmares from trauma, you know, growing up with an abusive stepfather. But another nightmare I had growing up in prison was actually seeing them murder Damien.
Yeah.
That actually happening. I had that nightmare over and over and over again. And I do not want to see that become a reality.
Right.
And this was the only opportunity the state gave me to save an innocent life.
Yes.
They should have done it better.
They should have done it better. They put it on you to have to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jesse, I understand. You know, I mean, he's the one that kind of got you into the mess with a false confession to begin with.
It's not his fault, you know.
Not his fault. I get it's not his fault, but I understand why he would have jumped at the Alford plea. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I understand why Damien would have jumped at the Alford plea. He had been abused terribly in prison.
Oh, yes.
Not only by the guards, but by the other inmates.
Oh, yes.
And was looking at the death sentence.
Oh, yes.
But you had the fortitude, you had the backbone, you had the tenacity. You wanted to fight it.
Definitely.
Yet you couldn't, because to have fought it may have meant another life.
May have meant another life, you know. Mm-hmm. At this point, they could no longer give me the death penalty. Even though they sought the death penalty, you know, originally at my trial, like they're like, hey, we're going to give you the death penalty, or you can say Damien did it, and we'll let you out with 5 years. I'm like, well, I can't say anybody did it because I don't know who did it. Only thing I can say with certainty is I did not do this. You know, that Damien did not do this, and I don't believe Jesse did this. That's the only thing I can say with certainty. I can't point a finger at who may have done this, not even to save my own life, right? Not even to save my own life. And so it was very difficult to make that decision, to change my mind to take the Alford plea. You know, when I first went into prison, it was like they had a pep rally all year long, you know, on what to do to me, everybody. You know, everybody, when someone's arrested for a crime like that, people talk about what should happen to that person, what justice looks like, what they're going to do to that person.
Right.
And so all year long, all these people have had these ideas and thoughts and amped each other up on it. And so when I finally got to prison, and there I am, I got to fight the home team, the visiting team, the umpire, you know, the coaches. I got to fight them all by myself. Everybody in jail, everybody in prison, from, you know, everybody, you know. And I had many bones broken.
Oh, my God.
Teeth knocked out. It's a miracle I survived it. But you take that extreme prejudice at the beginning, that extreme hate, that extreme destruction, and by the time I was released, it was all different. No longer did people curse me. No longer did people beat me. Instead, people prayed for me. Instead, people gave me hugs. People encouraged me. I didn't have to even lock my locker box anymore. Everybody was on my side. Even, it didn't matter if they were guilty or innocent, or a guard or a staff. They all was like they all embraced my fight for justice. It was like everybody's fight for justice. Everybody was hoping for a happy ending to the story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody believed in the long shot that one day, if anybody had a chance at getting their case overturned, it was us, because of all the support we had over the years, you know. And so my case, the West Memphis 3 case, was supposed to set the precedent in Arkansas, was supposed to be the one that opened the door for all innocent people to go free. This was the one that was supposed to say, hey, Arkansas, you do sentence innocent people to prison, and it is best to open the door and let them out. And so this case was going to be the one that proved that innocent people go there and that they can now start setting innocent people free. But the state did not want that precedent.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted the Alford plea so they can continue the lie that that they're infallible.
Sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, that they don't convict innocent people. And so they closed that door behind us when they let us out, right on all the other innocent people. And so that's why my promise to them when I was leaving is so important. You know, I didn't have any idea how that promise would manifest, you know, and it would come as proclaimed justice, you know, but I didn't know that at the time. I just knew I could not forget.
Oftentimes when we make those kinds of promises, we have no idea how it's going to be fulfilled and manifest. We just plant the seeds into the universe and trust the universe and God and everyone else to work with us to help make it happen.
Right.
And I really think that part of the reason that people changed about the way you were treated and the way they saw you, Jason, is because of the way your strength of character shines through. You've got such strength of character, and I admire that in you. I really do. It's something that you don't see a whole lot these days, and it's something that you're an example for. And I really want to see more of it, not only from criminal defendants fighting their battles, but from the police and the prosecutors and the defense lawyers. Come on, guys, do a better job.
Right.
Let's take it seriously. Let's realize we're dealing with human life here and all the repercussions that go to our siblings, our families, our communities, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So you've just got my greatest admiration. You really do. And
thank you, Vic. You know, that was kind of the hook that got me to really want to do this interview with you. Was Jonathan's email to me. He was like, "Hey, we share the same values," and I was "Oh, really?" That line got to me. And so,
shared values.
So I listened to your podcast, and I have to concur. You know, we do have those shared values.
Well, when you and I talk about stuff like this, you know, it's Noah talking about the flood. We've been through it.
Right.
Now, fortunately, I only spent 4 hours in a lockup, and it was just a little holding room. I can't even imagine 18 years. I was prepared for it in case it happened. You know, I knew I would have to. I'd already asked my wife to divorce me if I was found not guilty and try to move on with, if I was found guilty,
right, yeah,
and try to move on with her life. But to be the victim of a system gone mad, a system just looking for a scapegoat, a system just wanting to punish someone that they don't like, you know. Mm-hmm. They just call somebody out and punish them and make them responsible for something they didn't do. And I really pray for you and for your organization, for your funding, for your help. You know, Austin in Texas, there's a lot of rich people in Austin. I saw a lot of them at your fundraiser.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of good lawyers in Austin. Mm-hmm. And I'm asking anybody that's listening to this, you know, if you like this podcast, support Jason and his group.
Thank you so much, Vic.
Yeah. I pray to God that my office never convicted anyone that shouldn't have been convicted. We looked at every case as close as we possibly could. In my heart, if I did not believe that somebody was actually guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, there was no way I could ask a jury to find them guilty.
Right.
I was called the grand jury king when I was DA because, man, I would take stuff back to the grand jury. I didn't care if I was already indicted. If we found new information, a DA is going to be criticized for dismissing a case. It's hard to criticize the grand jury. So I just take it back to the grand jury and say, hey, we got this new information. What do you think? Oh, that should be a no bill. You're not going to win that. And you can kind of guide a grand jury to what you want to do. Like they say, a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich if you ask it to.
Oh, no.
And
Poor Mama Cass.
yeah, poor Mama Cass. she strangled on a ham sandwich.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, this was a long time ago.
Okay.
Mama's and the Papa's Mama Cass. Yeah. But
I'm a little behind on some things. Sorry.
I get it. Yeah, they wouldn't even let you listen to your music when you were in prison.
No.
Yeah, you got sent to the hole just for having music.
I did.
For having, was it Metallica?
Oh, yes. Anytime.
Please tell us the story, please.
Anytime Metallica came out with a new album, I would find a way to get it, just to hear it once, And so I know the guards were like sitting around like, hey, didn't Metallica come out with a new album? Yeah, I bet Baldwin's found a way to get it. Let's go shake him down. And so, but to me, if I could just hear it once, it's worth it, Because at the time, I don't belong there. I don't belong in prison. I was never supposed to be there. And yeah, I could sit on my rack and obey every rule they give me and live this miserable life and existence and never experience anything. And at the end of the day, it wouldn't do me any good. And so, yeah, I took risks to experience certain things that were important to me. And hearing new music was definitely important to me. And I love Metallica. That's been my band ever since I heard Injustice for All, my 13th birthday. So,
And what would they do to you when they'd find that Metallica tape?
Well, one time they put me in the hole without ever even charging me with disciplinary violation or anything because they wanted to know how I got the contraband in. And so I went in and usually if you get found, they charge you with a crime, they can sentence you to 30 days in the hole. But since they never charged me with anything, 30 days came and went, 60 days came and went, 90 days came and went, 120 days came and went. No 48-hour leave, no property, nothing. There's just trying to break my will.
And the hole is solitary confinement?
Yes.
In your underwear?
Oh, yes.
Is it in the dark?
There is light that comes through like a little window, like there's like cell bars and then like a few feet and then like a solid door with like a little bitty window on it, But yeah,
so
they would open that door and like slide my tray under and like the biscuits would catch like the bottom of the cell door, the door part if they were tall enough.
Yeah.
But yeah. Miss Sergeant Milburn, she used to come back there all the time. She goes, Jason, it just breaks my heart to see you back here. She goes, please tell them who brought the music in. I said, Sergeant Milburn, if you were nice enough to me to bring me something in, I wouldn't tell them it was you.
Yeah, good for you.
Well, then there was also an episode you told us about at lunch, which is funny, where you got the entire guitar in. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, that's on the same thing. The internal affairs guy, he was like, that could have been a bazooka, and I understand it could have been, but it wasn't. And so I understand them wanting to know how. I got contraband into prison, but I wasn't gonna tell them.
So if anybody from Fender is listening, let's go ahead and hook Jason up with a free guitar.
Yeah, really.
Time to sign him to an artist deal.
Give him back that guitar that
I was learning the chords.
Yeah. Give it back to him. Yeah. The Fender ought to give him one.
Yeah. He needs to learn Master Puppets. Let's go.
Yeah.
Chop, chop.
Let's do it.
I would love to learn Nothing Else Matters
first. Yeah, that riff is awesome.
Yeah.
If Fender gave you a guitar and made a contribution to your organization, I bet you'd be willing to put that picture out there and let Fender use it for their advertising and stuff.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would be very gracious and happy.
Jonathan, you got contacts with Fender.
Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. Jonathan actually gets to vote on the Grammys. He's that kind of musician. Yes.
I'm in the Recording Academy.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
This is true.
Congratulations. Yeah. Well, you were telling me at the event the other night that Gary Clark used to open up for you.
Yep.
He did. Yeah, Gary Clark opened for Jonathan. Yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah. I love to hear that, and just to see the way the arc of time shapes out. And here you are doing the good work now.
Yeah.
Jonathan finally figured out there's a better way to make a living than dragging a trailer behind you for 800 miles full of equipment.
The road life is a tough life, and it is a gamble for sure.
Huge gamble. And I'll tell you what, those dice never came up for us. Ever.
Well, the music industry has changed like everything else.
So we were talking about it just a minute ago. When did the support really start to come in for you guys?
Things started changing once the documentaries came out, because then guards and stuff would say, hey, my grandmother watched a documentary on your case and told me to let you know that she's praying for you. And so things like that would start making its way to me, and that just made people treat me different, made people see me as a human,
Right.
and stop beating me all the time.
Right, because, and I think they said it in one of the documentaries we watched, it's that when you were put in there, it's almost as if the guards wanted to continue to punish you in their own ways. You know, the public had punished you, a jury had punished you, and at this point, they wanted to have their shot at you too.
Right, it's like mob mentality, you know. Everybody wanted to get their kick and punch in, you know. And so the first few years, like, it was just non-stop fighting all the time.
Jeez.
You know, I'm a little guy now, I was even smaller then, just a kid, and like all the time I was fighting. And I was the only one there for them to take out their aggression on, you know, because Damien was on death row, Jesse stayed at diagnostics in the suicide prevention unit. And so it all came crashing on me, you know, everybody's wrath.
And the documentaries you were talking about were Paradise Lost. And how many did they ultimately make in that series?
Yeah, it would be 3 in the Paradise Lost series. At the end of my trial, you know, they found us guilty, and you know, at the end of it, Bruce and Joe promised one another, they're like, hey, let's keep working for these guys until we get them home. And so they thought once the first documentary was released and people got upset about the case, that we would soon be released thereafter. Of course, it would be many years later and still no release, and they were like, well, we need an update, so let's go film a second documentary. And so then they were like, okay, well, surely this is the one that's going to open people's eyes, you know. And so it was released, and many more years went by, and so they're filming the third, right? And they actually had to change the ending for it because we got out on the Alford plea, and instead of like later on through the evidentiary hearing or a retrial.
So HBO actually did 3 documentaries?
Correct.
And plus the Peter Jackson documentary, plus there's a theatrical release.
Correct.
Okay. What's the name of the theatrical release?
Devil's Knot. Devil's Knot,
Devil's
Knot.
Knot.
Yeah. It's based off Mara Leverett's journalism book on the case that she worked on for many years, where she lays out the whole case from start to finish and everything.
Right, and she came in, too, really open-minded. She said, if this is what the evidence leads to, their guilt, I accept it. If it leads to their innocence, I accept it. You know, so she really came in with an open mind, and those were her conclusions, which are awesome.
Oh, yes, definitely. And I don't think she went in with any type of preconceived notions one way or another. She's just going to follow the evidence wherever it leads. But she did take note from start that everybody else was already leaning towards guilt. However, she wasn't going to make that decision from the start. She just wanted to follow the evidence, and of course the evidence led her away from guilt.
Right.
And then she was just like, what type of machine am I dealing with here when everyone is programmed to treat us as guilty when the evidence doesn't show that?
Yeah, even when there's no evidence to show it other than the one confession. That was my understanding.
Correct.
Everything else was just cobbled together BS.
Right.
Yeah.
And one thing that these documentaries did bring up is there was some forensic evidence that did lead to specific people, you know, and you and I talked about this at the event. You know, you say even to this day, you say, I don't want to point any fingers at anybody, and you want to remain, you know, totally open to all possibilities because you had the finger pointed at you, and you don't want to do that to anybody else.
The presumption of innocence must remain sacrosanct. We must protect that at all costs, right? However, on the flip side of that, somebody actually committed these murders, you know, and I do not know who did that. You know, I wish I had that information to trade for my life, my freedom, my liberty. I don't have that information to trade. And so to hold my life ransom until I could produce that is wrong, you know. And so if I remember Act 1780 of 2001 being passed in Arkansas, which is the actual innocence statute that the General Assembly laid out, said the purpose of the judicial system is to convict the guilty and exonerate the innocent, right? Exonerate the innocent. And so it made it to where we could utilize state-of-the-art DNA technology in laboratories to test evidence. And so I didn't know who committed this crime. I don't know who committed this crime, but I knew that there was evidence, that there was a hair in the ligature of one of the boys. And honestly, I thought if we identify that hair, we've identified the murderer, right? Whoever it is, right? That's just what I thought. And so
And the hair wasn't just in the ligature. The hair was inside a knot, wasn't it?
Yes.
So it had to have been tied into that knot.
Yes. Yeah. The knot was tied and the hair like fell while the knot was being tied. It was my reasoning. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh yeah, whoever did this, they've tied their own hair into it and they've tied their own fate to this, right? I'm, confident it's not my hair. I wasn't there unless, I did have the thought, well, maybe what if the police plant some of my hair or saliva or blood there? I don't know if that's paranoia or just reality of dealing what we're dealing with.
I think it's the reality of dealing what you're dealing with.
Yeah, because I did fear that maybe, the cops, because on my night of my arrest, they took hair, blood, and saliva from me, but then they would have to take it again later on because they didn't have a warrant. But I'm like, hey, they can take this stuff every day. But then I was like, well, what'd they do with those other samples? Right? Did they plan it on the evidence? So even though I had that fear, I still had to say, no, we have to have all this evidence tested because it could lead to the killer.
Right.
And so it wasn't one of my mullet hairs, and so they get it tested and it comes back to be one of the kid's stepfathers.
Right.
And to me, what is a reasonable doubt? Transference. Could that have been transference? Like the kids are going in and out of each other's house and stuff. I mean, that seems reasonable to me,
Right.
And so
I would have to see a microscopic photo of the knot with the hair in it to decide myself, so that I could see how the hair got into the knot.
Right.
To decide, is it actual transference, or did this go into that knot while that knot was being tied on this ligature?
Right.
But
there's ways to look at that.
Yes.
And those are things that could be pursued with the case reopened and justice being pursued, and no matter what, and no matter how long it takes.
Yeah.
Using the full resources and effect of the state.
Problem with an Alford plea, though, is they consider this a closed case.
Not
a cold case.
Right.
So they're not going to put the state's money into a closed case. They'd put it into a cold case, but not into a closed case. Right. Unless maybe there's something different about that Arkansas law.
Mr. Ellington did say if we produce any results, he would be open to receiving them, in the future, But they have the power of subpoena. They have more power and resources than we do. My attorney and investigators are doing their best currently today.
Are they doing microscopic workups of the knot and how the hair was found in the knot?
The details of their investigation I'm not at liberty to discuss.
Okay.
However, they are exercising due diligence.
All right. That answers a lot. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Very good. So best day, Jason, what would you like to see happen to the three of you guys? Just full-blown exoneration and a public apology?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want our cases be reopened. I definitely want an exoneration. And apologies, I mean, at least apologize to our families. Apologize to the families of the kids who were murdered and say, hey, we're going to do our best to pursue justice no matter how long it takes now. We've had this hiccup, and it's put justice in the back burner for over 20 years now. But you know what? It's not over with. We can switch gears and get back on the right track. It's never too late. I'm a full advocate for that. And I'm not one for begging people to say I'm sorry for mistakes or whatever. Let's just move on past that and look at and see and how we can make this not happen in the future.
I like it.
Amen.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And of note, of all the forensic testing at the scene, there was not one thing that linked any three of you to it, which is...
Yeah, nothing.
Come on.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing linked you three.
And I remember, the night I was arrested, the police were so horrible. They refused to accept anything I said at face value. And so they took me to the hospital and took hair, blood, and saliva. When they took my fingerprints, they took entire handprints and footprints. And I'm like, these guys, the police, for whatever reason, they refuse to listen to me. However, whoever committed this crime must have left some type of evidence behind for them to take this type of evidence from me.
Right.
So that gave me hope that they would compare my samples to the samples from the crime scene, and that would prove my innocence. And then they would say, you know what you've been saying is true all along. Go home. We're sorry. You know. Right. And so that's what gave me hope. That's what gave me the strength to be able to stand up to how ugly this situation was.
Right.
You know,
right.
Because I thought they were going to do their job and test those things.
Right. And while you're sitting there in trial too, it almost looks like you guys are saying, you know, internally at some point they're going to realize that this is wrong. I mean, it's like, you know, maybe now they're going to get it. Maybe now, but they just didn't.
Yeah, at any minute somebody's going to come running through the door and whisper to the prosecutor, and he's going to walk over to the defense and to the judge, and they're going to have it figured out some way, you know. I didn't understand, you know, the science of legal atmosphere I was in, but I thought and hoped that everybody was in the pursuit of the truth.
Right.
You know?
God, that's scary.
It's so scary. So scary. And then by the Alford plea, not only did they cut off being able to go forward and find out who really committed these crimes, they also cut off you being exonerated completely, and they also cut off you being able to get any monetary compensation for all those years that you wrongfully spent in prison.
Right.
And I watched Making
wages earned.
I watched Making of a Murderer, you know, and I saw what happened to Stephen Avery after he got that big settlement for being wrongfully convicted the first time.
Right.
They didn't want to pay him. Now, there's a lot of controversy over whether Stephen Avery did it or didn't do it, but I've watched it, and I'll tell you, I certainly have my doubts, especially in light of him looking at $38 million or whatever it was, and then suddenly they don't have to pay it. Right. And there were so many problems with the way that case was put together. And police misconduct just over the fence, the fence.
It is terrifying what he went through. I can't speak for everyone who's served time for a crime they didn't commit and they're finally found their way to freedom again. But that is a fear of mine, to be blamed again for something I didn't
do. I know.
You know, and just have my life upended and taken away from me again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I do things to protect myself from that. I keep detailed and accurate log of my whereabouts at all times, where I'm going. I keep a log of it, you know, in case that day comes and someone says, hey, you were here doing this, I can produce viable records saying, no, this is where I was at, what I was doing.
I know what you're talking about. I do, because I have those fears. I'm not going to say how I do it, but Jonathan and I keep a drone flying over me all the time, just to keep me protected.
That's a good idea.
But at the same time, though, Vic, when you were indicted, that's what saved you. You know, a lot of you keeping that paper trail is what saved you from serving your 80 years of federal time.
Paper trail, plus the Attorney General of Texas, when the Rangers came after me because of the Lucas grand jury, he advised me, he said, Vic, put in a tape recorder and you tape everybody that walks into this office, because they're going to be sending people in to try to set you up.
Wow.
And I was advised to do that by the Attorney General of Texas, and I did it. And I'll tell you, when it came out that I had done that, it pissed a lot of people off. How dare him, you know, record me without telling me he was recording me. Yeah, well, it saved my butt, too.
Right.
Because we had some of those guys who showed up in there to testify against me who had said something totally different when they were sitting across me in my office in front of the desk than what they were trying to say they had said. Mm-hmm. So I was glad I had those tapes.
You got to protect yourself.
And here's what the feds did when they arrested me. You know, they searched my house backwards and forwards. They went to the DA's office. They shut it down for an entire day while they went through every piece of paper there. And they were looking for that tape recorder. They had heard I had it. The microphone was hidden in the ceiling. They actually pulled out my desk drawer and stood in the desk drawer and broke the desk, getting up into the ceiling. They seized all those tapes. And the U.S. attorney said, He's not entitled to have these back. These are not defensive. These are the same as the Richard Nixon tapes, and they will prove him guilty. I'm going, no, they won't. Give them back. And the judge finally made him not give them back, but let us listen and do our own transcripts. I spent 6 weeks at the FBI office in Austin, every morning from 8 until 5, listening to those old slow tapes and transcribing by hand.
Wow.
Yeah, hours and hours and hours. And I think we had 90 or 100 hours of tape.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so,
That reminds me of our Daniel Villegas case when we were preparing for trial. The prosecution dropped 1,200 hours of tape telephone phone calls between Daniel and whoever he was talking to while he was in the county jail, and they said he said something incriminating in there. Of course, they don't tell you where.
Yeah, they don't tell you where.
And so, in the efforts to just like slow your work down, because they know we have limited funds and limited resources and limited time. But I'll tell you, Natalie Maines of the Dixie Chicks, she's the president of our board. She rolled her sleeves up and says, "Hey, send me the tapes. I will listen to them while I'm writing my next album."
No kidding?
Awesome.
For real.
Oh my God.
And she sat and listened to every, like you were talking about, going through the hours painstakingly, listening to it, what's being said, rewinding it, playing it back. Could that be incriminating? No, that's not incriminating. She listened to it all and said, he didn't say anything incriminating in there, which we knew he didn't, but you have to prove it, She said that was just a total bluff to divert our resources.
That is so impressive. I did not know that about her. I knew that she was some of the money and the face behind your organization.
Oh, yes.
But I didn't know she did that kind of elbow grease work.
Oh, yes. She cares about the cases deeply, and
Wow.
she gets in the weeds, and we in our board meetings and everything, we discuss the cases.
Wow. I'm totally impressed with that. Totally impressed.
She has got guts and grit and character.
That's another thing that needs to be changed, though. The discovery rules in criminal cases, where they can just back a truck up to your office door and say, it's in there somewhere. There's a needle in that haystack. Go find it. Hell no. Give me the needle. Don't give me the haystack.
Right.
They know what the needle is. It's their duty to tell me what it is.
Right.
It's just not fair. We need to change everything so that we've got a level playing field. Matter of fact, it really shouldn't even be level. It should be slanted in favor of the defendant because the prosecution has the burden of proof. That's what our original documents are based on.
Sure.
Our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. We should live by it. Our citizens should stand up and demand it.
There should be no limit on the cost of protecting the liberty of the people.
Exactly. And too many folks on the jury, they just don't get it. That phrase, but for the grace of God, there go I.
Oh, yes.
You piss the wrong person off, or you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and become a scapegoat, and then that runaway freight train is headed right at you. Mm-hmm. And everybody needs to understand the power of the government and that it can run your butt over. And we all need to stand up as a group to keep that from happening, as a nation.
Yes, sir. We got to protect ourselves, because the way it happens now is that during jury selections, the prosecution will pick 12 people that will find you guilty, not because of the facts of the case, but because they don't like something about you or your lifestyle.
Exactly. Yes.
And so they're like, oh, well, he's into that. He must have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not basing the case on the facts.
Mm-hmm.
That's just inserting your own personal prejudices.
Yes, it is.
And so
Yes, it is.
we need to truly get a juror of our peers, and we need to teach our people to be more understanding of one another and be more responsible when they accept that juror duty.
Yeah, and more demanding of the government.
Exactly.
Meet your burden of proof. Don't ask me to do you a favor. You're the one with all the power. Why are you asking me to do you a favor?
Right.
My favor goes to the guy over here you're going after. But they dehumanize people.
Oh, yeah.
That's the first thing to do. That's what Hitler did, with the populations that he wanted to get rid of. He dehumanized. They're vermin. They're rats. They're awful. They're subhuman. And that's what prosecutors say about criminal defendants.
Yeah. Beware anyone that is calling any segment of humanity something less than and trying to incite violence towards them.
That's right.
Beware of that.
What we got, gentlemen?
I just love Proclaim Justice, I have to say. When going to the event, the thing I like most about it is it's a one-stop shop. You guys take care of everything. And that's phenomenal versus trying to donate out to, 5 different charities, one that does evidence, one that does, providing legal aid, one that does, an investigator. You guys do it all under one roof, and I find that just incredible.
Yeah, not
Thank
just
you.
that, but helping to take care of them after they get
Right.
out.
Yes. It's like Daniel was saying, up there on the stage the other night, it's not get you out and say, oh, have a nice life, good luck.
Yeah.
You've got the deck stacked against you when you get out. It's going to be difficult. You're going to face challenges, things that you can't even imagine. And so you need someone who is experienced and a good set of people, there that care and that can, ease you along the way and help you, deal with life.
And Daniel's case was interesting because he was offered an Alford plea as well.
He was.
And he turned it down.
Well, at first he said yes because he was ready to go home and get out of there and just have that done. He was tired. He'd already been through several trials, and he knows that they'll stack the deck against you.
Right.
However, his wife, his man of faith, was like, no, you got to talk to somebody. And so she called John and I. We flew down there immediately and spent the weekend with them. And they grilled me. They grilled me all weekend about how it feels to be free on the Alford plea.
Yeah.
And I just let them know, it's not anything I recommend. If they want to stand and fight, that we were with them. And ultimately he made that decision, and I'm so happy he did because he was found not guilty. And as Judge Madrano said to him, says, Daniel, you have lived under many restrictions imposed by this court for many years. Today you are free of them all.
Oh. And that's when he broke down.
Oh yeah, he
Legs
fell.
went right out from under him.
And I made sure to stay there until Madrano locked eyes with me, because just the day before, after when the jury went to deliberate, I'm standing out in the lobby, and I noticed his bailiff moving really fast straight towards me, right? But the doors were behind me, so I'm like, oh, let me get out of this man's way. He's on a mission, right? And so I took a step to the side, and he changed direction straight towards me. I'm like, oh no, he's coming for me.
Yeah.
I need to run. Not really, but he was coming for me. And he said, Mr. Baldwin, the judge would like to see you in his chambers.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, whoa, okay. And so I followed the bailiff to the judge's chambers. And there was Mr. Madrano. He said, on behalf of the legal community here, I'd just like to say, I'm sorry for what you went through.
Wow.
Welcome back to the world. And he's like, hey, you look like you could use something to eat. And they had like breakfast burritos, because I'm skinny. Everybody always says that. But and he introduced me to everyone. He asked me on my opinion about the case, about the state's closing arguments, about the facts, and all of these different things. Because now, the trial aspect's over with. We're just waiting on the verdict and everything.
Right.
And so we had a good discussion, and at that time, neither one of us, and no one knows what the verdict is going to be.
Right.
We know what it should be,
Right.
but you never know.
You never know.
And so when the jurors start coming back, I'm looking at them as they're coming in, and I already know, because they looked over at Daniel sitting over there, and they were trying to hold back good face, like smiles and stuff, and there was no animosity in their eyes, no like you're gonna fry or nothing like that.
Yeah.
And it was a different courtroom than what I experienced, for sure.
Right.
When the jury came back in my case, we could hear them behind the jury door as they had come down the stairs, and they were waiting to come in to the jury box. And they're just laughing and cutting up. And I tugged my lawyer's coat. I said, Gary, they found me not guilty, man. He goes, how you know? I said, they wouldn't be laughing.
Yeah, they would be more.
Yeah, you're right about that. You're right.
Yeah, because that's a heavy thing.
It's
it's
a heavy thing.
burden to put on people.
Yeah.
And so you want to do it right.
Yeah.
And so when you're coming back with good news, that's good to share.
Yeah.
You're excited to share it,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, that's what
Yeah.
they're.
When you see them out in the hall about halfway through deliberations and they're not looking at you anymore, that's when it's time to worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I've heard it bannered around, the phrase that the people lose faith in the judicial system when the judicial system releases innocent people. I say that's not a loss of faith. That's more strengthening of faith.
I agree.
you
That
know?
shows it works.
Yeah, it
It
shows.
may be working a little late, but at
Right.
least it's working.
Yeah, they're correcting mistakes. There's nothing created by man in this world that is infallible.
Exactly.
Right? So we have to create mechanisms to correct the mistakes we make, and when we discover them along the way, it can't be impossible.
Right.
We should not make finality the issue, because that's what makes it impossible to correct the mistakes, when we elevate finality to be the goal instead of justice.
Exactly. There's just something wrong with that. There's
It
just
is.
something wrong with that. I noticed, though, watching West Memphis, that the judge who presided over the Alford plea, was a different judge from the
Correct.
trial judge. He seemed, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he seemed rather sympathetic.
He did.
He said some things he really, as the judge, didn't have to say.
Yeah, at the end, he made acknowledgement to what everybody had been through together, collectively, because this was something that didn't just affect me. It didn't just affect Damien or our families. It affected the whole community.
Yeah.
And so I think it was very healing what he said, and it's healing for a community.
For the community, and I think your story is healing for this entire country, because the whole country needs to know your story. They need to know what you went through. They need to know what prosecutors and police are capable of. And we need to support and uplift our prosecutors and police that are doing it right.
Yes.
And our defense lawyers that are doing it right.
Yes.
I mean, here in McLennan County, say if you're court appointed on a case, and thank God I don't take court appointments, but if you are court appointed on a case,
Right.
and you get it dismissed, you get paid less than if you go plead them guilty. Now, that doesn't make sense, because sometimes it takes a lot more work to get one dismissed.
Right.
Sometimes they get them dismissed and they don't even get paid.
Oh, wow.
I know. The whole system here is backwards and upside down. Thank God a couple of our judges are studying it right now, because some of the defense lawyers have gone to and said, our system is broken. You're rewarding people to do a half-assed job.
Right. That desensitizes or takes away the incentive to do a good job.
Yes, it does. Yeah. So I really think that your story is healing for our nation. And I want to help you do everything we can to get it out there and get more stories like yours out there, so that we can turn this ship around and have a system that we're proud of.
Yes. That
Not
is
one
for
we
the
just
people.
say we're proud of, but we're proud of. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, yeah. That we're proud of, and is definitely for the people.
For the people, yes. And not just for rich people.
Right.
It's got to be for everybody,
For
for the
all of
poor
us.
people too. That's why we have to support our public defender's offices. That's why our labs should not be under the control of the prosecutors or the police. We got to level the playing field.
Oh, yeah. When a police says, "Hey, here's some evidence. I believe such and such did it," and the lab technician gets that evidence. Well, he's already heard the police say who he thinks did it. Well, now that lab technician is going to be biased to find in that favor.
Exactly. Cognitive
Right.
bias.
Yes.
We found that a lot in some of the lab reports having to do with Henry Lee Lucas, because the cop will go in and go, this guy did it, and this is this, and this is that, and these are human bones. And man, they got bodies stacking up like cordwood, There are murders happening like, one after another. And those medical examiners' offices, it's not like you see on TV where they leave a body laying out for months while they work on it. No, it's triage. Get them in, get them out, get them in, get them out. All right, you say these were human bones? All right, I'll sign off. Human bones. No reason not to believe it, And
Right.
you're right, it's cognitive bias. We need to pay our people better, and we need to demand more of them. And I think if we would quit fighting some of these senseless wars and try to do more to get along with each other and stay out of people's bedrooms and stay out of people's medicine cabinets, we'd have the money to support a better judicial system and a better police system.
That is true. We could do so much better for our people with our resources. You can't. I can't tell you the number of guards and staff I encountered when I was incarcerated that they would tell me, "I'm simply powerless to help you. I believe you. I believe you're innocent, but I am powerless to help you." Meaning, we've created a system to where they are empowered to punish, hurt and destroy, but no one is empowered. No one is given a mechanism to save an innocent. We've designed the system like that, so we need to redesign it and give people back the power to help people wherever they find them in need.
So true. So true. Thank you for listening to the Vic Feazell Show podcast. We're a primary source podcast. We talk about people we've known, things we've experienced. We're a primary source podcast. For more information, visit vicfeazell.com. Leave us a comment or a review. Subscribe to our YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook pages. And thank you for listening. Share us with your friends.
This is Texas singer-songwriter Brian Burns, and I'm here to tell you that my friend Vic Feazell has a new phone number. It's 1-877-948-4842. That spells with Vic, 877 with Vic. Now, we hope you're never in a car wreck, friend, but if you are, don't call for just any lawyer. Call for Vic Feazell at 877 with Vic.
With principal offices in Waco and Austin, Texas.